He didn't speak. He just paid $21 to buy 3 girls at an auction, and what he did next left the whole town silent. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The wind was dry and slow that day, sliding through town like it didn't want to stay. Dust followed close behind, catching on boots and the empty edges of porches. Nothing looked wrong from a distance. The horses were tied up. The saloon doors hung open. But the street was too quiet. Not peaceful, just wrong. People stood gathered in the center, not moving, not speaking. They weren't there for music or food. Their eyes were locked on something that didn't belong. A man on horseback slowed near the edge of the crowd. He'd come for supplies, flour, maybe nails, but something in the air made him pause. A feeling like the world had tilted. And then he saw it. A platform, rough and low to the ground. 3 Chinese girls stood on top, barefoot, dresses torn, faces empty. Behind them, signs on wood boards, $7 each, no family, can cook. The girls didn't speak, didn't move. A man in a bowler hat called out prices like it was nothing. A few men laughed, but not for long. Even the sheriff was there staring at his boots. The man on the horse didn't speak, but something in him shifted slow and sharp. And he got down. He didn't plan it. He didn't even know he'd move until his boots hit the ground. 1 second he was just another man at the edge of the square, and the next he was walking toward the platform, hat pulled low, shoulders straight. The crowd shifted as he passed. Someone muttered, "Another buyer," but their voices carried more curiosity than scorn. He reached the steps and stopped, looking up at the girls. They still didn't look at him. The auctioneer grinned, sensing easy money. "Fine weather to pick yourself a helper," he said brightly. "Or 3. Speak your number and we'll settle up." The man's voice came out rough from disuse. "I'll take all of them," he said. The grinning man blinked. "All 3? Full price." "Full price," he answered. "Cash." The crowd went silent as if waiting for a punchline. "No inspection?" "No inspection." His words were short but steady. The auctioneer laughed too loud. "Guess we found ourselves a generous man, folks. Hope he's got a big kitchen." A few men chuckled, but the sound was thin. The man reached into his coat and drew out a worn pouch, counting bills and coins until the auctioneer's hand trembled. He passed the money without a flourish, then turned toward the girls. "Come on," he said quietly. "You're free to walk or stay. Nobody here owns you." It was not a command. It was an invitation. The tallest raised her head first, as if trying to see through him. The others followed, slow, uncertain, but they stepped down. The house sat miles from the edge of town, tucked behind wind-worn trees and a broken fence that hadn't been mended in months. It wasn't large, but it was clean. The porch creaked. The roof held. Inside, 3 chairs sat around a table built for 5. One chair was smaller, carved by hand. It hadn't been used in years. The man led the girls to the door and opened it without a word. He didn't look back to see if they followed. He didn't need to. He placed firewood in the stove, lit a lamp, and set 3 chipped plates on the table. No names, no questions. Just space. The girls hovered near the doorway, unsure if they were guests or prisoners. He finally turned to them, slow and calm. "This house is safe," he said. "You decide what to do with that." Then he stepped aside. That was all. No demands, no orders. He slept that night in the barn on straw and old memories. In the house, the girls stayed awake. They did not speak. They did not eat. But they stayed. Morning came soft the way new things do, and for the first time the chairs were no longer empty. The days passed quiet but not still. The girls didn't talk much, not even to each other, but small things began to shift. The tallest started folding blankets by the fire, humming a soft tune that had no words. The middle one stirred broth in the old pot, adding herbs he didn't recognize. The youngest still slept in the barn, curled beside the dog, her boots never quite dry. The man didn't press them. He came and went like the wind, feeding animals, chopping wood, clearing brush. He left bread near the fire each morning and water by the stove at night. He never asked for their names, never touched their arms, never gave orders. One evening, as he mended a fence rail near sunset, the youngest walked up, arms crossed, eyes hard. "Why'd you buy us?" she asked. Her voice wasn't afraid, just tired. He didn't answer right away. He looked out across the dry field where nothing had grown since the year his wife died. "To unsell you," he said finally. She blinked once, turned, and walked back inside. She didn't slam the door. She left it open. And that night, for the first time, he found 3 bowls scraped clean. Word spread faster than wagons ever could. By the end of the week, Clear Hollow had made up its mind. They didn't need facts, just whispers. Some said he kept the girls locked in the cellar. Others said he married all 3. A few claimed he'd lost his mind after the war and didn't know right from wrong anymore. At church, the preacher didn't name him directly, but his voice rose sharp when he spoke of impurity, of foreign blood, of homes defiled by unholy comfort. People nodded. Some glanced sideways. The feed store stopped filling his orders. The grain merchant said he was out of stock, though everyone knew that wasn't true. He rode into town once and came back with fewer words than he left with. Even the blacksmith who once shared whiskey with him turned away. The girls noticed the change. The air around the ranch grew tense, stretched thin by silence and stares. One morning the sheriff rode out and leaned on his saddle horn. "You should know," he said. "People don't like what they don't understand." The man nodded. "I know." That night he went to the barn and saw it, a sign nailed to the door, letters painted in thick red strokes. Yellow fever, no name, no face, just a message that was meant to shame. He didn't tear it down right away. He looked at it for a long time, the way one looks at a wound that hasn't started healing. Then he closed the barn door, slow and calm. They came just after noon. 12 riders, dust rising behind them like smoke from a fire that hadn't yet started. Some carried pitchforks, others had rifles slung across their backs, faces hard, eyes colder than iron. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They just lined up at the fence like they were measuring the distance between anger and action. The man stepped out alone, coat unbuttoned, hands empty. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just stood there, steady as a fence post. Then the door behind him opened. One girl stepped out, her chin lifted. She stood beside him, close but not clinging. The second followed, slower, then the third, hands balled into fists. They didn't run. They didn't hide. The crowd didn't move, unsure now. Then came the sound of hooves from the side. The sheriff. He rode in slow, dismounted, and looked at the line of men. "You'll have to go through me too," he said, voice flat but clear. No one answered. Not a word. One man shifted in his saddle. Another looked down. Then slowly they began to turn away one by one. Not because they were beaten, but because something stronger than fear stood in front of them, and didn't flinch. Supper was quiet but not heavy, the kind of quiet that comes after something has settled into place. The middle girl placed a small wooden carving on the shelf, a girl sitting on a horse worn smooth from travel. "You remind me of my father," she said softly. No one replied, but the words hung in the air like something sacred. The eldest ladled soup into bowls and smiled faintly. "I've never been allowed to cook my own food before," she said. "Not like this." The youngest, usually silent, let out a small laugh when the dog stole bread from the table. It wasn't loud, but it was real. The man didn't say much, just watched. As they ate, something loosened in his chest. A thread pulled free after years of holding breath. He looked around the table, eyes soft, voice low. "This house," he whispered, "it breathes again." And for once it truly did. Years passed, but some stories didn't fade. Folks said the old ranch never burned, not even when wildfires danced close and skies turned red. There was something holy about that place, they'd whisper, not always knowing why. Travelers rode by slower. Children hushed as they passed the gate. Inside the barn, above the rebuilt beams, still hung a ribbon, red sun-faded, tied once by hands that had chosen to stay. It didn't mark an event. It marked a promise, one made in silence, kept in warmth. And though no one spoke it aloud, everyone who saw it somehow understood. Love had lived there,